This video is an excerpt from Jude Dupera DeVille's science fiction novel, The Snapdragon Code, now offered on Amazon Books. Please watch, learn, and enjoy. With briefcase in hand, Stan walks past several bedroom suites near the upstairs sitting room just before turning onto the Bel Etage's Great Hall. Portraits in oil of Rothmann ancestors line the massive gallery, and each is flanked on either side by gilded pilasters, adding to that personage's prominence. Stan grins as he passes them by, knowing full well they probably never existed as people, or at least never here in this place or time. As Stan walks down the extensive hall between the massive sienna marble columns, his Italian shoes start tapping a beat on the quarter-sawn oak floors. The repetitive taps then start echoing off the panelled walls and continue sounding down the Great Hall as though the sound was coming from a congratulatory troop sending him off to battle. In one way, that's what it was. His own personal battle for control of the Illuminati. Sadly, the honorary applause for this fallen angel, who had once almost touched divinity, had long since subsided. Wide marble steps now lead him down to the grand entrance hall on the main level. As he holds onto the thick bronze stair rail, he quickly descends toward the massive entry foyer, whose ceiling soars almost 30 feet high. Here, the bas-relief figures on the walls appear to look back at him with seeming wistfulness. Unfortunately, the magnificence of this place had never made any of its residents happy. No amount of marble and gold could ever make a difference for the Rothmans, but then again, had they ever existed at all? Maybe at some other time, but not here, because this place was merely a construct of bits and bytes, not stone and mortar. Anyway, what is marble and gold but merely a very thin sheet of particles, wherein electrons circle atoms, creating reality? Nevertheless, Stan still turns back to say goodbye to his imaginary ancestors, as he swings open the heavy wrought-iron front doors to leave. Bright sunlight greets him as he steps out onto the sprawling stone patio and goes down the wide steps, passing the twin bronze lions. His day had now begun. The sun was sitting higher in the sky this time of year in May, and it felt warm on his face. Stan quickly puts on his Versace sunglasses and then tilts his black head visor forward to shade his eyes. The shrub-lined path he now takes brings him past a grand marble fountain with 3 standing verdigris fish, all spurting water into the air before spraying their droplets into the shallow round pool. The ripples in the water catch the sunlight, like diamonds dropping into the turquoise blue Caribbean. The morning breeze starts moving the new spring blossoms in one direction and then another, as a way of dispersing their sweet fragrance. Stan stops to sit on one of the ornate copper benches placed around the pool, where he can face the sun and let its rays warm him. It had been a long, long time since he had touched a real flower or felt real water that had not been digitized into qubits. There was no actual difference, except that he knew there was. All his experiences came from virtual heavens. That was it. Nothing was real anymore, and he knew it. The only time I get any peace is when I'm here. I'll make believe this is not make-believe, Stan tells himself. Before, the games were everything to me, but now I wonder whether they really were. It's hard to still want something when you no longer even care about it, he reflects. I wonder if any of them really still care either, he says out loud. By them, he meant the people who followed him here. Anyway, I started this whole mess, and now I will have to finish it. Shrugging off these thoughts, Stan gets up and starts walking the path towards the topiary garden, where the leafy kings and queens, pawns and rooks were all ready to play chess on the mowed squares. The pieces were always perfectly trimmed and bounded by fleur-de-lis-shaped shrubs outlining the board. Once he passes this area, the walkway neatly bordered by English boxwoods takes him to a large stone gazebo that looks out at its twin across the lawn. Near the entrance of this garden monument stand bronze statues of the 3 dancing cherubs with their friend, the Capricorn. It's a place Stan often comes to visit when he's here. The sprawling area of lawn beyond the gazebo is where the helicopter will land, and so in the meantime he goes inside to wait for his ride.
We'll set her down in just a couple of minutes, the pilot tells his co-pilot. Remember, like I told you before, he doesn't care for small talk, not even about the weather. It seems to make him uncomfortable. So I stay away from conversations altogether. Why, is he a weird dude? I don't know whether he's weird, but his middle name is certainly unusual. It's Lufa. One time a while back, I heard one of the security guards at the airport say it was short for Lucifer. Anyway, he's one of the richest men in the world. and he never flies in his helos without a co-pilot. I mean, look at this bird. Can you imagine what this thing set him back for? Now, wait till you see where he lives. It will be coming up in our view as we swing around here.
And as the helicopter circles the landing area, the chateau appears at the top of the hill with the bright morning sunlight hitting its facade. "My God, this place is a palace!" Captain Talbot exclaims as though he's speaking to himself.
Yes, it is a palace, and Mr. Rothmann definitely lives like a king here. Some say he is a king for reasons I'll explain later. Okay, this is where we'll put her down, and let me repeat, yes sir and no sir, but that's it, Captain Murray says. As the chopper touches ground, both pilots see Mr. Rothmann coming towards them. "We can't leave it on idle, he doesn't like that," Captain Murray says as he starts shutting down the controls. Then they both scramble out and stand at attention on either side of the entry door. "Good morning, sir. This is Captain Talbot. He and I will be your pilots today going into Paris. The weather is perfect for your flights today. Will you be carrying any luggage?" Stan simply shakes his head no, while showing them his briefcase and tote bag only. "Well then, Mr. Rothmann, if you're ready, we will get going."
As they lift up off the ground, Stan notices how the copper statues along the chateau's parapet radiate with the morning sunlight, changing their verdigris color from a greenish to a golden glow. Stan thinks for a moment that these pilots may not be any more real than the statues up there on the roof. One never knows for certain who's real and who's a fill-in in virtual environments. So once again, Stan now feels totally alone, like the stranger in paradise in his favorite old song. Putting his headphones on and taking one last look at the chateau as they spin around, Stan says au revoir to his favorite place on this planet. After only 30 minutes into their ride, Captain Talbot is already phoning the jet's steward to let him know their estimated time of arrival. After 20 minutes in the air, the sparse countryside gives way to villages and then to the City of Lights. When they arrive at the Paris airport, they have the landing pad all to themselves on this Friday morning, so after briefly hovering over the target, they drop down effortlessly like a dragonfly onto its water lily. Right away, Stan can see his private jet waiting for him there. It's just a short ride in the limo to where the Gulf Stream is parked. Stan would have preferred to walk the distance between the two, however his bodyguards always insist that he stay protected while in public areas. When Stan steps out of the helicopter, he immediately steps inside the limo while being covered on either side by several men carrying guns. From there, it's a short 5-minute limo ride to the jet.
Good morning, sir. We expect perfect weather today for your flight to the States. We're now ready for you to board, sir. Then we'll seat the rest of your party. Yes, sir, I have the count. We'll park the jet at the Portland, Maine International Airport and from there use the chopper to get to Bretton Woods, which is roughly 90 miles away. I've already made the necessary arrangements for that trip, and so we're set, McCarran says in his usual reassuring manner. Today, we have 2 flight attendants on board for your 6-hour trip to New York City. They will be happy to take care of anything you need during your flight. My co-pilot today is Captain Connell. I think you've met him before. As I mentioned, the weather is clear all the way to New York, and since we've just come off of maintenance, we are in tip-top shape, as they say. Stan was already halfway up the ramp stairs, even before Captain McCarran had finished his last sentence. He wasn't really interested in speaking at length with people he felt were, well, quite possibly traitors or imposters.
Stan quickly goes over to his usual seat and hopes for minimal interruptions from now on. Although his bodyguards are on board, they're seated in the back section and understand that they are not to bother him unless called upon, of course. The plane itself epitomizes luxury accommodations with seating for as many as 19 passengers, in addition to the 2 pilots and 2 attendants. Stan had purchased the jet mainly because it could travel straight across the Atlantic without refueling, and this jet did just that, in total luxury. Stan can hear the engines start up just as he buckles up in his white leather recliner. He presses the seat's heat and back massage controls and then opens up his laptop to the conference speech he will be giving. He wants to go over it again so he can underline which parts he must emphasize. He plans on appealing to the attendees' sense of loyalty to their own kind, as well as their sense of pride in their accomplishments so far. Although that tact had not exactly been successful the last time they were all together, Stan intends to bring it home to them this time. What can he expect from them now, he wonders. They're disappointed with me and disillusioned with our progress. I understand that, but this time I have new stats to report on. Our defensive satellites are in place, and surveillance of the masses has ramped up since the majority of humanity has been nanotagged. Eventually, there will be a lot fewer of them anyway, and therefore much easier to control. That thought alone makes him smile as he slowly runs his fingers through his perfectly coiffed hair, a habit he had begun recently. Just as Stan starts to read over his speech, he can feel the jet accelerate and rotate upwards. I've got 6 hours ahead of me, so I should be able to finish this speech off by the time I get to the city. Then tonight I'll watch the tourists on Madison Ave and dine alone, on the penthouse terrace. At least I've got that to look forward to, he reminds himself. By now the heated massage had started to relax his tense lower back muscles. We have reached cruising altitude. If you would like to get up and move around, you may do so. My name is Valerie. Is there anything you need, sir?
My name is Valerie. Is there anything you need, sir? Yes, I would like coffee, along with one of the scones I brought on board. I will let you know later if I want a cocktail. Yes, sir, right away. Valerie answers politely, while knowing immediately what kind of person she was dealing with.
Stan begins reading the salutation of his speech. Good afternoon, honored guests and esteemed friends. Note to self, bow to the audience. Let me say how eternally grateful I am for your enduring allegiance to our cause, both then and now. I will never forget what all of you have sacrificed to follow me here, to this less than idyllic planet. I hope the amenities that this unique location is providing you, right in the heart of these picturesque white mountains, has distracted you for at least a little while. Being here today in Bretton Woods, I feel honored to be able to meet with all of you in such a historically significant place, both to the world of finance and to the world in general. I say this because what has been decided here and what will be decided here will have global impacts. Also, as an aside, I would like to remind you that there are legends surrounding these forests, and from what I've been told, they are not mere folklore. No, the rich earth that feeds these old-growth trees near this president's lodge has engendered powerful monetary spells that seem to have worked sometimes like magic. As proof, consider that the decisions made here back in the mid-20th century still stand today, unbroken. However, now may be the right time to consider implementing a new set of monetary regulations. A new reset, if you will, that can once again change the entire world's balance of power, while at the same time consolidating our own. As we have agreed, the days of the US dollar's hegemony as a reserve currency will eventually fade, whether or not its citizens can accept the repercussions. Then an interruption with blue shoes stops by. Stan could see her feet and then the tray she was carrying. However, he chose not to acknowledge her presence at all. To Stan, she was less important than the shoes she wore. Jenna remembered that it was best not to speak to him as well. She had worked his flights before and recognized what he was, a man without concern for others. As soon as she leaves, Stan stops to sip the coffee and munch on his orange-glazed scone, his first reminder of his not being at the chateau. A few minutes after that, he gets up to walk around and use the lavatory. Once back in his seat, he quickly checks his numerous emails. He could see that his office secretary had already replied to many of them. The ones not yet attended to were those marked private for Stan's eyes only, and he intended to take care of those himself. Because the US markets had not yet opened for the day due to the time difference, Stan took a moment to once again quickly check the GCP color dot for any changes, more so out of habit than real concern. Surprisingly, there were periods of yellows and reds, but it seemed everything had normalized back to the green dot at the Global Consciousness Project. I'll check the news to see what might have affected the readings earlier. Maybe it was just a glitch in the matrix, he told himself while chuckling. Before resuming his work on the speech, Stan took some time to get up and stretch his legs again. They were flying above the clouds and almost keeping up with the line of the rising sun. Stan would arrive in New York City at just about the same time that he had left Paris due to the over 6-hour time difference. He would have plenty of time to finish up his work in the next 2 hours and then maybe catch a nap after lunch. Thinking back on the words he had prepared, Stan realizes that it reads like a manual for world domination, probably because that's exactly what it was. Only he and his own people would believe its literal translation. Stan had been against the Council's plan of forced retraining from the beginning. He felt all the trouble had begun with the introduction of the newer androids. If the androids had not been created equal to the analogs with their cloned bioneuronics, none of this would have happened. No war, no disruptions, and their perfect lives would have continued on indefinitely. Here in this heaven, we have no way of knowing who's analog or who's digital. We just can't tell the difference between the ancients and the androids. The Council had no business authorizing the creation of bots identical to themselves. That was Stan's opinion. He wondered whether the origin of the words, angel and devil, could have come from the words analog and digital, since that's exactly who we are. Fallen angels and they devils. How could the Council have expected us to treat bots as equals?
It's absurd, he says out loud, and then reminds himself that soon things will be back to the way they were. Then my people will recognize the work I've done for them. After his musings, Stan returns to his seat and continues to rework his speech.
By the time he finishes, 2 hours have passed and the completed draft is ready for presentation. The speech should take no more than 30 minutes, so that will give my audience ample time for questions.
Now I deserve a cocktail, he decides, as he motions to the mannequin waiting to serve him. A gin and tonic? Beefeaters only. Stan orders as he sits back, shuts off the heated massage, and listens to the humming of the jet's engines.
This weekend will give me time to mend fences. I need them to work with me and not against me, he reminds himself. If we don't work together, we'll end up being no better than a bunch of natives fighting over coconuts. Stan was drinking gin today, and probably would have another later since he didn't have to worry about being on top of his game. After a few minutes, his Caesar salad and salmon entree arrives. Then, after finishing his lunch, he puts his feet up and begins listening to the news. Surprisingly, he quickly falls asleep in his recliner at 25,000 feet.